Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Helium and LoRaWAN. This is our next developer webinar today. My name is Jeff. I'm the customer engineering lead at Helium. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I know a lot of us are working from home due to shelter in place. So it means a lot that you guys are taking the time to join me today. If you this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you don't make it or need to drop off, it'll be up for you. So a quick overview of today's webinar. We've made a major announcement regarding standardizing on the LoRaWAN protocol. So I'll be talking about that. There are a couple of other updates. If you used our platform before in the past, you may have noticed these changes. So I'll be talking about these changes. There will be a quick quick demo later on. I'll give you a quick preview on what's coming up next. And I'll save some time towards the end for a Q&A session. So it'll give you a chance to ask some questions. So this webinar comes at the tail end of our recent announcement of a collaboration with Semtech Corporation and standardizing on the LoRaWAN protocol. Semtech is the largest supplier and the main owner of LoRa hardware, which LoRaWAN, the long-range, low-power wireless network, specifically designed for IoT devices, is based on. So what this really means is if you are a hotspot owner, you now own a LoRaWAN gateway and are a participant in the largest and fastest growing LoRaWAN network in the US. And this also means that there is an entire ecosystem of existing LoRaWAN devices that can now leverage this network. There are a couple of caveats to this support. Currently, we are compatible. We support Class A devices on the LoRaWAN 1.0.2 spec. This support may change, and we will add additional support based on demand, and we're constantly working towards updating to the 1.0.3, 1.0.4, et cetera, 1.1 spec. So in most cases, these existing LoRaWAN devices will be able to utilize the Helium LoRaWAN network. The US LoRaWAN frequency basically has 64 uplink channels. The LoRaWAN frequency, the uplink channels are defined between 902 and 915. And there are 8 separate subbands for this frequency spectrum. Now, we specifically support devices that use subband 7 or channels 48 to 55 within this frequency spectrum. So it kind of varies from device to device. Some devices still use all 64 channels, and those will work. So for Class A devices, when the device sends an uplink, there is a small window where you can send a downlink. And we'll basically use that small window to send a channel match to correct for that subband. For devices that do not use transmit on subband 7, you will need to make a change so that it can join the Helium network. Now, at this point, you may be asking, Jeff, I have existing LoRaWAN devices. How do I get them on the Helium network? Is it really hard? I'm happy to say it's actually super easy, barely an inconvenience. And it all starts with Helium Console. We've done some major overhaul to Helium Console. It's meant to be a device management tool with network services that lets you configure, monitor, add devices, monitor data activity, and manage connectivity costs. For today's demo, there will be a couple of manual operations, but there are REST APIs available, so it will be pretty trivial to automate with a script. So how does Helium Console fit into our overall architecture? Over here, you can see we have end nodes, which are essentially your LoRaWAN devices. you have your people's network, which are hotspot owners, the hotspots that are deployed within the US. And then you have we have endpoints on the right, which are which can include HTTP, MQTT, AWS endpoints for you to transfer data with too. And Helium Console is basically the management dashboard that will connect it all. This part, how do you get started? Console is actually free to use, and it will probably be free for the foreseeable future. There will be no cost associated with an account with Console. We have a payment plan where you basically pay for the data that you use that your device transfers, and I can go into more detail about that during the actual demo. So without further ado, I'm going to just step into the demo. I'm going to switch my screen view here. Can everyone see my screen? There should hopefully be console on the left and an IDE on the right. All right, perfect. Thanks, Jorge. So this is the console page. It's simply console.helium.com, and you can register an account for free. I have one here, so I'll just go in. And once you enter, you'll see that you're greeted with the dashboard, and there are organizations now, or you can think of organizations as the owners of the data. Today, for today's demo, I have created an organization specifically for this webinar. So from this page in this organization, you can head over to the devices screen, and you can take a look at some of the devices that I've created for today's demo. We manage devices using labels, and this is meant to be a very flexible tool to define and group devices as you see fit. For example, I have a couple of devices defined here. They can be temperature sensors, GPS-based trackers, air quality sensors, for example. And to also demonstrate the capability of the flexibility, let's say, for example, these devices are all, you can sort it by region, you can manage them by region. So I can, for example, select all these devices and apply a label. Let's say, because I'm based in San Francisco, I can say these devices are all in San Francisco, and you'll see that now this label is applied to all these devices, and it makes it super easy to manage and configure devices. So for today's demo, I'll be using a development board, and the one supplied here. It's a ST Micro development board, and this one's pretty nice because it has Arduino pin headers that makes it easy for you to prototype and attach shields if you choose to. So once we enter the device page, this is the configuration and credentials that I have for the device that we're using for today's demo. Now there are 3 key elements in the device credentials that you'll need, and they're seen here: device EUI, app EUI, and app key. Now going back, when you add a device, you'll notice that will automatically generate some credentials for you. For those of you who are using a development board, you can use these credentials. If you have a pre-configured LoRaWAN device, you will need to modify these fields here with the credentials that the manufacturer supplies you with, the dev EUI, app EUI, and app key. So going back here, if you look to my right, there is an example sketch in the Arduino IDE. And this sketch can actually be found in one of the libraries that are supplied within our Arduino IDE itself. And to find that, you merely go to Manage Libraries. And if you search for MCCI LMIC, you'll find this library right here, the MCCI LoRaWAN LMIC library by IBM. And the current version is 3.1.0. And once you install it, you can head over to File, Examples, scroll all the way down to the LMIC library. You'll see a Helium US 915 sample sketch. And this sample sketch is essentially the proverbial hello world sketch that most people use to get started. You can see that it'll send some arbitrary data in the form. Hey, Randall, a quick question. Is this being recorded? Yeah, this will be recorded, uploaded to our YouTube channel. Awesome. So a couple of things here. This sample sketch just sends simple hello world. And if you look here, there are 3 fields that you need to modify. And those are simply copy and paste from the credentials that you see on console. So you'll also notice that this sketch will actually specify the format. So you'll see here, app UI will need a little endian, and the app and dev UI are both specified as little endian, whereas the app key is specified as big endian. That's just one thing that you'll need to keep track of. And you can modify that within console here. You can either expand to hex values and change the formatting. So simply copy and paste. Zoom the script on the right a big. Sure. Let me. So on the left, this is basically where I copied the values. Let me full screen it. So essentially, that's all you need to modify in your development environment, and then you just need to compile and upload the firmware. So let me head back into console. So this is the demo device I set up here. Again, it's using that discovery board that I showed you earlier. You'll see the subband 7 here with the device credentials. So over here we have a live data tab and some test data that I sent earlier. But let me hook up my device right now. And hopefully we will see something soon. So I just turn on my device and you'll see, so Jameson subband 7 is required, cannot be changed. So we favor subband 7 because we looked at all the channels and it seemed to be the least congested. If your device is sending on all subbands, that's fine too. Within the window on a new uplink, we can send a subsequent downlink that'll adjust the channel mask and change it, modify to subband 7. If your device is only transmitting on certain subbands, it won't really, you'll need to change it. So if we look at this activation here, you'll see a join attempt from this device. And this is the hotspot that heard it. It has an excellent name, Flat Lilac Shrimp. It's actually sitting right next to me. And you'll see our first uplink. So there we go. I can kind of talk about some of the values that we're seeing here. RSSI is a measure of signal strength, and the signal to noise ratio is a measure of the signal quality. I've already attached an integration which I can, which is basically an HTTP endpoint that I've used for this demo that I can talk about. I'll show you in a bit. You have a payload which doesn't look like the hello world string that we set in the sample sketch, but I will talk about that a bit later. We have over here a frame counter, and the frame counter is a security measure. Essentially, when you activate a device, it'll set an up and down frame counter to 0 and increment sequentially based on device uplink. And what this means is it prevents replay attacks. If a device is sending packets with a frame counter that is lower than the current frame counter, either the device or hotspot will reject it. So you can see that this device is starting to send some packets. I can talk about the integrations here. So we have a couple of options, HTTP, MQTT, AWS Core. The one that I set up today is HTTP endpoint using this free service called RequestBin. And it just gives you an option to send HTTP post requests. And you can apply integrations to specific labels, like I've done here. I've attached this one to my webinar device. So this is the request bin. Over here, you can see some of the packets that have been sent. This is the entire payload that the device sends, and you can see app UI, dev UI, the hotspot name that heard it, and some of the labels. And here is the actual device user-defined device payload, and you'll see it really looks nothing like the hello world string that we sent. And the reason for that is it's encoded. It's a base 64 encoded value, so you will just need to decode using your favorite base 64 decode function. So I'm gonna head back into console. Last thing I'd like to talk about are data credits, and this is essentially how payment for console works. You pay a flat fragment. You pay for 24 byte fragments equivalent to 1 data credit, and this cost will always be fixed. From your perspective, the cost per fragment is simply 0.00001 US dollars per data fragment. So over time, it's essentially very, 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 very cheap, and you're only paying for the data that you use. So that actually concludes the demo. I'd like to give a quick preview on kind of the new features that we worked on and what's coming up next. We're expanding our features integration-wise. If you notice on the integration page, we have MQTT, AWS, IoT. We've recently done a partnership with My Devices. And if you're an existing The Things Network user, we have a really neat tool, utility, a command line interface that will let you migrate these devices pretty seamlessly in the console. And we're working on some developer kits based on that discovery board that I mentioned earlier. And also, there's a huge library of LoRaWAN devices, and we're basically testing, vetting them as we go. and we'll be updating them as we go. So that brings me to my next point. We've actually overhauled our developer documentation as well. You can see the new page here. There's a lot of documentation spec-wise. We'll be adding a device library of basically Helium approved and Helium tested devices here. One that we found that has worked quite well is our devices in digital matter, and we'll be expanding that library as much as possible. Next thing I'd like to talk about is we're launching this thing called the Helium Insider Program. And you can think of this as kind of like an ambassador program of sorts. So we're deployed in 10 major cities right now. And really, we'd like to accelerate growth in those communities as much as possible. So what the Insider Program is, it's the way to represent Helium in your local community. If you have accelerated programs or you want to host meetups or workshops, we'll be happy to help out. Provide hardware, give you food and drink stipend, give you swag, and you'll basically have direct access to the Helium team. And we'll try and help you out and let you know about changes as they come. Finally, just to reiterate some of the resources that you have your device configuration dashboard console. If you haven't created an account, registration's free. Feel free to look in to make an account and take a look at what we have to offer. We have our updated developer documentation page. We have all our code is open source in our GitHub repo. There's a developer community Slack. There are a lot of people on that right now. If you haven't registered an account, I highly recommend that you do so. A lot of great projects, a lot of great people. And a couple of other resources. So here's the Q&A session. I see a couple of questions already, so feel free to just write them out in chat. I'll try and get to them as we go. So, hey, John and Jameson from Orange, how's it going? Jameson asked, to use Cargo, we need to program our devices to match your expected format rate. Yeah, so we have a demo endpoint for GPS tracking called Cargo, and it's not completely and you will need to match the correct format, otherwise Cargo won't accept that payload. I believe it's documented in the Cargo integration page. Adrian asked, how does the Helium cryptocurrency work with data credits? Is Helium credit for data usage, or can I buy a credit? So that's a good question. From the user perspective, you're paying a dollar amount for data credits. There is a conversion between Helium Network tokens and data credits, but we don't know what that value is yet. So if anyone else has any other questions, please feel free. So is there noticeable, so Harrison asks, is there a noticeable performance difference or benchmark available between LongFi and LoRaWAN? So with this standardization on LoRaWAN, LongFi, essentially, the protocol will still exist, although we won't continue developing on it. In terms of performance, it's probably not too large, because essentially we're using the same hardware, and yeah, so I would say performance difference is pretty negligible. Drew asks, is there a means of supporting mobile base stations or moving a static station without penalty? So I'm going to answer your question two ways. If you're using a consumer hotspot, right now, you will suffer in your proof of coverage score because you're not asserting a static location. However, if you go to developer documentation, there is a way to create what we call a DIY hotspot. And currently that DIY hotspot is cannot be added to the blockchain because data credits don't exist, but it will support packet forwarding. So Jameson asked, any update on cloud mining? Yeah, we have Alpha, I believe it's called Alpha Miner Pro. If you looked on the community Slack, I believe there was a sign up for it. Should happen pretty soon. Joel Newell, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Can you explain proof of coverage? So that might so a simple answer is if you have a hotspot and you deployed it in a location, proof of coverage is our way of determining that your hotspot is providing coverage in the location that it says it's providing. So actually, what I'm going to do is show you our network coverage page. So Joe, this page shows all the active hotspots. You'll notice we have about 3,000, a little over 3,000 deployed. And part of proof of coverage comes in the form of these challenges. And every now and then, a hotspot will create a challenge to a group of hotspots, and this is it will basically be a way of proving their location via RF. Drew asked, what about roughly one move in 3 years, i.e. apartment dweller? So if you move your hotspot, right now, without data credits, it's free to reassert location. If you do that in the future when data credits are implemented, you will have to pay a fee, data credit fee, to reassert the location, and your proof of coverage score will basically start from scratch. Lon asks, are there basic developer kits of hardware to get started getting familiar with the platform? Yeah, so we're working on putting together developer kits, and they will be using the board that I used for the demo here, the ST Micro Discovery board, and we'll have a shield as well for you to easily attach other sensors, and that'll be coming pretty soon. So Jameson asked, can you briefly show the previous slide with all the resources? Want to make a copy? Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second. Let me bring back that page. Here you go. Can you see that screen? Awesome. Thanks, Jameson. So looks like there aren't any new questions. Feel free to ask any more. I have a couple of questions for you, actually, while I have you guys here. Are there any additional feature requests that you guys like for us to put in the pipeline? I'm going to be working on building out that LoRaWAN device library. If you guys have any devices, existing device that you have that you'd like to see tutorials on or see, please feel free to put them into the chat, and I'll add it to my list. Jorge, thank you. Great info, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining. Mobile base stations. Hotspot side. Yeah, I think some of us have actually built like outdoors ruggedized hotspots. I definitely try and put something together, maybe with like a solar hotspot. Jameson heavyweight micro tracker. That I think John actually mentioned that device is one of those that is pre-configured for a different subband, and out of the box will require a change to use either all 64 channels or specifically subband 7. But I'd be happy to take a look at that too. Adrian would like a FAQ on an external outdoor antenna, or at least a parts list. Yep. Okay. Can definitely put that together. We have a couple that Adrian, are you in the community Slack? There is an antennas channel, and there's a lot of cool setups. But yeah, I can definitely put together like an outdoor antenna guide. Drew, for the last recording, this is Joe Transfer logged in. I don't know how Zoom handles registration. Jameson, also would be interested to know your thoughts on supporting LoRaWAN roaming to other public networks. Is there interest? Yeah, I can definitely get back to you on that. Feel free to shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to start that discussion. Hey Cleme, would you take email requests if we think of additional features you'd like in the future? Yeah, anytime. You can send it to this email, or you can message me. Feel free. Evan, any messaging, text, SMS under consideration? I think that's been discussed in the past. I don't know where that lies in the roadmap right now, but yeah, that's definitely been discussed in the past. Hey Robert, any plans for extending the how-to quick start to the cheap ESP OLED LoRa boards you can get from eBay? Yeah, we can definitely expand the quick start guide. We've simply started with the discovery board as like a nice and easy platform to get started. If you have if you've heard of Heltech, I believe they have they're based off ESP32. We can definitely add to those development board guides. Yeah, Travis is one of my coworkers, and he's also working on a couple of guides. Hey Elliot, do the hotspots have GPS for nodes that have GPS? Any interest in generating a true coverage map a la TTN mapper? So the hotspots do have GPS. I'm not quite sure if they're enabled at the moment. I believe they are, and we can definitely. That's definitely something else that we've talked about. That's an idea that's been bounced around or mentioned in community Slack. We can definitely try and put together something like the TTN mapper to see like a coverage map. MY, does the planned pricing table for different amount of data exist and open to share? So the cost per packet is fixed. Well, we have a calculator that we can provide based on like 1,000 devices, 10,000 devices, and transmitting data like say 5 minutes a day. I can follow up on that. We should have a calculator available. Hey, Jameson, we noticed that there is a version of Discovery Board that includes a GPS shield. Have you tried it? So for the Discovery Board, I used to have a guide with the Adafruit GPS attachment shield. If you could send me an email or link me to that new version, I'd be happy to take a look at it. Robert, yeah, exactly. Heltech boards are the ones that that I mentioned earlier. Can put together a guide on that. Any other questions? Looks like there aren't any new questions coming in. So if it's okay with you guys, I'll probably just end it here. I'll give a last call for questions. But again, thanks so much for joining me this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. Hopefully everyone is staying safe. Hopefully you found this helpful. We'll be adding more feature-wise and putting together more webinars if you guys find this type of stuff helpful. Hey, Joe. Hey, thanks again for joining. It's great to see you here. Lon, thanks. Danger of overuse of 900. So it's as an unregulated, unlicensed and unregulated band, it's kind of up to us to use it properly. Harrison, thanks for joining. MY, how many IoT devices are connected now? Can we see that on live? There will be a way. There will be a way of tracking active devices, uh, probably through console or something similar. Yeah. So if there are, I guess at this point, if there are any other questions, you can please feel free to email either through this developer at Helium, um, or my emails here. Feel free to talk to me and send me an email at any time. Happy to speak with you guys. Hey, Hori, thanks for joining. Stay safe.